Should you buy a Switch 2? A question that I've noticed floating around the internet a lot recently. So here's my opinion on whether or not you should buy a Switch 2 in 2026. With games being one of the main selling points for buying a new console, I think it's very important that we take a look here at the games that are available on the Switch 2. So first off, the third-party library is shown to be very great, and the Switch 2 has been receiving a lot of good third-party games, but they've already been on other consoles for a while. So if you already own those consoles, chances are if you wanted to play those games, you already have. Some of these major third-party games include Cyberpunk, Street Fighter 6, and Elden Ring. You can also now play Fortnite at a nice smooth 60 FPS that runs very well, as well as being able to play some sports games at a higher resolution with graphics that look significantly better than the Switch graphics. That's more or less the third-party side of the Switch 2. Now let's take a look at the first-party game side. The first major game for the Switch 2 that's meant to be a vocal selling point for the console is Mario Kart World. I've also made a separate video on this game out on my channel if you want to take a look at that. But I came to the conclusion that this game was kind of mediocre for Mario Kart, and that I honestly think that I might have enjoyed Mario Kart 8 Deluxe better. So I don't know that that's necessarily a selling point for buying the console. Now on the other hand, one game that I think is definitely a good reason to buy the Nintendo Switch 2 is Donkey Kong Bonanza. I spent countless hours in this game just exploring and looking for bananas and just collecting fossils, and I've really enjoyed my time playing it, and I feel like it's overall a very great game to have. You can definitely put a lot of time into it without getting bored. One game that I have not personally played, but has great reviews for the Switch 2, is Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I personally, from the videos I've seen online, think that this game looks great for someone who likes a relaxing and cozy Mario experience. And honestly, I feel like it's probably a good reason to buy the console if that's your type of game. Another first-party game to talk about is Mario Tennis Fever. I personally have played this game, and I very much enjoy playing it with family, but if you're just someone who likes to play video games on your own, then I don't see this as a good way to justify buying a Nintendo Switch 2. Kirby Air Riders is another Nintendo game that I have not personally played on the Switch 2, but it honestly, from its ratings and overall how other YouTubers view it, it's kind of shown to be a mediocre game and not really also a great selling point for the Switch 2. We've also gotten some Switch 2 versions of Nintendo games, like Pokemon Legends EA and Metroid Prime 4. I've played Pokemon Legends EA, and I honestly felt like the general storyline and concept of it got very, very boring, and it was all very similar after playing for a little while. So I would personally not recommend that game as a reason to get the console, especially if you already own a Switch, then you could just play it on the Switch 1 if you wanted to. I haven't played Metroid Prime 4 on the other hand, but given that the reviews have been very poor for it, I would honestly say that it's probably not a good reason just to be able to play it on the Switch 2. Of course, when talking about the Switch 2, you cannot forget about Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, and their Switch 2 editions. I haven't actually played either of these games, but I do intend to pick up a copy of Breath of the Wild sometime soon to play through it. And many people recommend it if you haven't already played those games for the Switch 2 edition, but otherwise, the upgrade's not really necessary to justify buying a Switch 2. Let's move on to the hardware side of the Nintendo Switch 2. I think the best way you can compare, like, the overall Switch 1 to the Switch 2 is the Switch 1's kind of like a kid's toy, and the Switch 2 feels much more like an actual adult's console, and like it has a lot more potential. It feels much more durable, it looks nicer. I think the size difference of the Switch 2 makes it much more comfortable to hold in the hands. When I played the Switch 1, I felt like a lot of times I would get hand cramps due to the small size of it. But with the Switch 2, I don't even need a grip case, and I feel like it's very comfortable to hold and to play for long periods of time, like on a plane or in the car. Also, knock on wood, so far Nintendo has proven that the Switch 2 is not going to get stick drift, which is a great thing to see because stick drift on the Switch is just so irritating. Also, side note, if you're still watching the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. The screen is also another thing on the Switch 2 that I feel like was a huge upgrade. I don't have a Switch OLED, I have an original Switch, but I just felt like the difference was huge. Not only is it bigger, but the colors felt way more vibrant, it felt just cleaner and just nicer looking in general. Unfortunately, I don't like how big the black edges around the screen are. That was kind of frustrating, but I'll take that drawback considering how much better the screen looks. One thing that you can absolutely not forget about when it comes to Switch 2 is the difference in performance. The overall visual and internal power difference is just phenomenal. Like, when you want to play games at 4K 60 FPS, just looks and feels great, and it makes the experience of playing video games much more enjoyable. With all of that kind of being an overview of the Switch 2, I'm going to move on to talking about whether or not you should buy it. So, one main thing for why to buy it now is, since this fall we're going to have a price increase from $450 to $500. I think if you're looking forward to the new Ocarina of Time game and other future games coming out, then this is probably a good time to pick up the console. You may also have noticed online how Nate the Hate has been talking about a 3D Mario game coming in 2027. So if that's like the big franchise that you really want, which I know for a lot of people that's the selling point for a console, is big 3D Mario or a new Zelda game, then that's definitely a reason to consider getting it this year before the price increase. But I think my personal opinion that comes down to on whether or not you should buy it is on personal preference. If you're someone who already owns a Switch, but is not super serious about like Nintendo games, and you're just looking for like your big first party games, and your Switch still works fine, then I don't see right now as being like a necessary time that you should upgrade. But like if you have the extra money and you can like upgrade, then I would consider it for sure, because it is very enjoyable to be able to have nicer hardware and to play those consoles games at better resolution. Now, if you're like a huge Nintendo fan in general, then I think it definitely makes a lot of sense if you can afford it to upgrade, considering that there are some good games for sure that are first party, and there's definitely going to be bigger first party games that are going to be amazing coming in the future. I mean, Ocarina of Time remake just looks phenomenal, just from the short trailer that we've seen. Finally, if you're someone who does not own a Switch or a Switch 2, and you maybe don't even own another console, then it might be a great time to get this console, because you can play first-party games now that are already out and future ones coming, as well as being able to play third-party games if you don't own another gaming console already. At the end of the day, whether or not you should buy a Switch 2, I think just comes down to your personal situation, and I think it's different for everyone. If you watched the end and you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and check out more videos on my channel.